Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny. Bill Barnwell is here. We are getting perilously close to the beginning of the season. Perilously is maybe the wrong word. That sounds like it's a bad thing. It's a very good thing. Bill, I am so excited to see you. We've been doing NFL Live together, but it's been a long time since you were on the pod. Of course, the host of the Bill Barnwell Show. What is your excitement level on a scale of 1 through 10 for Cowboys Eagles in 1.5 weeks?
I'm very excited for the game. There's like a broader grind of the season thing that's changing. This is my first season with a child, which we had during the off season. So the idea of like taking care of a small human being and staying up till like 4 a.m. on Sundays, not sure how it's going to work, but I am very excited about the first game of the year because that's a Thursday, and Thursday night is a safe space where nothing bad can happen.
Yeah, hopefully by the time you're listening to this, the Micah Parsons stuff has been resolved. Our long national nightmare will have ended. Because that would make that game a lot more interesting. Of course, I will be previewing that game and all of the games week 1 with Ben Solak, who was also, by the way, he's going on paternity leave.
Yes, I know.
We're kind of playing it to the wire with him. There's gonna be another pod next Tuesday. Taylor Kyles, who does a great job joining the Pats, is going to join me for that one. It's not to talk about the Pats, he just does. But this week, I'm taking sort of a team-centric approach as we face the season. Michael Jr. and I will be doing our annual team draft later in the week. But you and I are doing something different. It was a kind of a game, I suppose, or an exercise, a thought exercise. So because at the end of, I've been doing division previews, which are over now. And at the end of every division preview, we rank the teams, right? How do we think they're going to finish? And I would say, I have to go back and look, but almost all of them, we picked the favorites, which is their favorites for a reason. Vegas knows what they're doing. So I asked you to come on today and help me go through every division and make a case for someone other than the betting favorite to win the division and kind of explain why that might happen. This doesn't necessarily mean it does not mean it's either of our picks. It's just a thought exercise because the favorites often don't win. So you're doing the NFC. I am doing the AFC. I shall go first.
Okay.
With the AFC West.
Okay. Oh, this is going to be a tough one.
It's a good division.
Yes.
I went with, I think, what is a little bit of an easy answer, the Denver Broncos. But I want to...
Oh.
You didn't think I was going to go Broncos?
I don't know if that's the easy answer. Would you say the Broncos are ahead of the Chargers in terms of like likely teams to dethrone the Chiefs? Absolutely. Wow.
I think so. I know. And you say, well, the Chargers have the best quarterback, right? He's one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL. That's usually a great coach, good defense last year. But let me explain to you why I think the Broncos could do this.
Okay.
Last year, the Chiefs had an extremely unsustainable, statistically, number of close wins. I will say, just by the Chiefs fans, if you're yelling, I tend to believe the Patrick Mahomes Andy Reid combination does negate that. But there were also like insane things that happened, like missed field goals, weird penalties, whatever.
Yeah.
So the Chiefs, okay, according to FTN, which used to be Football Outsiders, the Chiefs were the strongest overperforming team since the merger by Pythagorean wins. They finished 15-2. They had 10.2 Pythagorean wins. So Pythagorean wins is the formula based on point differential that calculates how many wins a team should have. The Broncos finished with 10 wins in reality and had 11.5 Pythagorean wins. So,
okay.
All right, get in. I got more.
You know what I'm going to say, right? About how they got to that 11.5 win total. Do you remember what happened in week 18?
The Chiefs game?
The Chiefs game where the Chiefs had a chance to fulfill my preseason prediction with you and Dominique and win 16 games. And Andy Reid got okey-doked me by rolling out Carson Wentz and benching every one of his players. And the Broncos won like 100-0.
Okay, so that might be distorting the evidence a little bit.
A tiny bit, but I'm willing to go along with you on this ride. They're closer by their point differential than their records would indicate.
So that's the start of my argument for the Broncos. The other two things I will say, I picked this as the best defense in the NFL, even if, and just to get ahead of it, yes, they had a lot of turnovers, but all the
Mhm.
underlying metrics suggest they were a great defense as well. People say, well, they didn't play anyone. Even opponent adjusted metrics suggest, throw out the numbers. Just look at the talent up at
Mhm.
every level. I love the additions that they made on defense. Offensively, so this was a
Yeah.
team, again, that had 11 and a half Pythagorean wins with an
Mhm.
elite defense and
Mhm.
what was, I think it's safe to say, a mediocre offense, right? 15th in passing DVOA, 24th in rushing DVOA.
Broncos fans are going to be so mad at you for using that word, Mina.
I'm about to say that I think this offense is going to be better than mediocre this year. They
Okay.
were average last year. I'm sorry, it's
Mhm.
just what it was.
Sure.
The rushing in particular stands out as something that I think could
Mhm.
improve with the change they've added at the running back position. I think more likely than not, Bo Nix will improve on his rookie season, part because he plays in a fantastic infrastructure. This is one of the best, if not
Mhm.
the best, offensive lines in football. And oh, by
Mhm.
the way, this Sean Payton guy, pretty freaking
He's
good
pretty
at
good.
coaching, turns out. But Bo Nix in particular, like, look, regardless of what you think of his ceiling is, he was undeniably better in the second half of the year. I think that
Mhm.
him and Peyton kind of figured out what are his strengths, how do we build this offense around them. Got better at picking his spots when he did push the ball downfield. He's a good
Mhm.
scrambler, and I like the
Mhm.
additions there also on that side of the ball. Evan Ingram I thought was a good pickup. So yeah, I that's my case for the Denver Broncos beating the Chiefs. Elite defense, elite coach, improved offense, and they were better than the record indicated last year.
Hmm. There's a little bit of like hand waving here, though. A little bit of like, oh, but they didn't play anybody. Who cares? They had one win before that Chiefs game last year against a playoff team, or sorry, a team with a winning record last season. I think it was the Bucks
The
early on
Bucks,
in the
yeah,
season,
who only had like
and
one of the best offenses in the NFL, by the way.
also a team, by the way, who outperformed their Pythagorean, underperformed their
Yeah,
Pythagorean expectation. They were really good last year by
yeah.
their point differential. I do think there's some element of a narrative being spun here about Bo Nix, where early in the year, he really struggled. First few weeks of the year, I think he had a lower first down rate than Deshaun Watson, which is really hard to do given how bad Deshaun Watson was last year. And I think there was this sort of enterprise level sort of like, oh, he's just starting his career. You could throw that out when he got better in the ensuing games. And I think the reason he got better in the ensuing games is that he really struggled against bad teams, and the schedule got much easier. And they were
Mhm.
not playing from behind. They were not playing in situations where he had to throw to catch up. They weren't playing against great defenses. And we saw in games where they did play great defenses, or even competitive defenses, Bo Nix did
Yeah,
struggle to me. And I think more importantly than the struggle, I think Sean Payton was very conservative in how he used Bo Nix
yeah.
in those spots. There was like a Chargers game where he was averaging like 1 air yard per throw, through the first 3 quarters of the game, and then eventually they had some success in the first half. It wore out in the second half. The Ravens game, when they got down early, he was unable to throw them back. And the Bills game, where he has an awesome touchdown early in the game, looks great, and that's the only touchdown they scored the entire game.
Yeah.
My concern is facing a tougher schedule this year. Not being able maybe to shield him as much. I think there's like this, as fans, I think they get frustrated when they hear this, but it's true. And I think it's a credit to Sean Payton, not an insult to Sean Payton. Like, they were really aggressive in shielding him in a lot of
Yeah.
spots last year. Third and long, they were not going to drop him back if they could avoid it. They were going to throw, a swing to Marvin Mims. They were going to throw a screen. They were going to run an RPO. They were going to throw on early downs when they could, because number one, their drop by the sign run game was not very good, and number two, it kept them out of third and long. Hopefully, those spots were positives for Bo Nix. They ran a ton of plays because the defense was really good, and so he had really, I think, very solid cumulative stats that maybe take some of the air out of them because they're not going to run as many plays potentially this upcoming season. But I do think that's where it starts, right? Like if the Broncos are going to be significantly better than their record was a year ago, it has to come through Bo Nix, and I think it has to
You
come
think
through.
so? See, that's what I'm disputing here. I'm
How
arguing
so?
that because I believe the defense is going to be elite, because I think this
Mm-hmm.
offensive line is still going to be good. Like, yeah, Bo Nix was not great he wasn't playing from behind very often, but when you look at those numbers, they're not good. Obvious
Mm-hmm.
pass drop back situations. I just don't think he's going to be in them that much, man. I think like this offense
Right.
is going to protect him a lot, and all he has to
Mm-hmm.
be is slightly improved with a better run
Mm-hmm.
game. One of the things he really struggled with last year too was his play against the blitz. And
Mhm.
I just think, like, when I think about, like, Sean Payton and what are the things they can get better at as an offense this year, that's something that I feel like I think that there's, like, obvious spots where he can help him improve
Mhm.
without putting the onus on him. He doesn't I think my whole case for Denver is that Bo Nix does not have to be a top 12,
Mhm.
13, 14 quarterback
Mhm.
for this team to get away with winning the division because of how good everything is around him.
But are we not doing the thing where we assume everything that was great last year is going to be great this year, and
100%.
everything that wasn't good
I'm
last
just
year
looking
not
at the
going to be
talent.
good this year?
I just think that the
But
talent, there's just talent, too much talent on this defense. Same way I
oh, it's
felt about,
great.
yeah, some of the other
There's
top defenses
there's
last year.
tons of talent on that defense, and I don't think they're going to be bad necessarily. But
Yeah.
things go right that aren't going to go right from year after year. You have
Yeah.
maybe a half dozen potential turnovers that instead of being interceptions, they fall to the ground. That totally changes the complexion of your season in some ways. I agree with you. If the offensive line is as good as it was last year, which on paper it should be, if the defense is as good as it was last year, on paper it should be. Bo Nix can be the guy he was last year, and they can win 11 games. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But what if the offensive line has,
Yeah, I mean,
Garrett Bowles goes down in week 4 for
say that
2
about
months.
any
Suddenly
team.
they're have to stretch the offensive line. What if, for example, Pat Surtain is not, the best cornerback in football? What if he's only like the 7th or 8th best cornerback in football? That changes things. And then suddenly now there's more on Bo Nix's shoulders. I think my concern is I'm still not totally sure I feel comfortable putting that on Bo Nix's shoulders. And to bring it all the way back to what we talked about previously, I still kind of think the Chargers, who also made significant additions to the they did lose with Sean Slater for the entire
I
season.
was gonna
I
say,
kind of
you're
feel
you're
like
throwing
they're
out
the
a hype, but
team.
wow, what if the Browns' offensive line someone gets hurt? The Chargers
Yeah.
starting left tackle did get hurt. It happened in reality, and I
A
might have picked
Chargers
them.
player getting injured
I
before the
know.
season?
I
No.
I I
Um,
I'm selling them. I don't, because I think that the defense for like when I look at just like the two defenses on both teams, I look at the
yep.
Broncos and I'm like the Chargers defense really outkicked their you know coverage last year, so
Mhm.
to speak. But
Yes.
I just look at the rosters and I'm like, this Denver depth chart is just so much better than the Chargers. Like, where are
Mhm.
you getting pass rush from outside of Khalil Mack? Where are you getting, like, this cornerbacks are really unproven. There's just
Mhm.
questions. I think they'll be good. We gotta keep moving to if we're gonna get through all this.
Yes.
But
Yes, we can talk about this
I
for
just think that
hours.
the Denver has a better roster, and that's kind of, even if the Chargers have a better quarterback. All right, give me the NFC West.
NFC West. Okay, I'm going with the Arizona Cardinals. And
Okay,
this was a
the
surprise
fun
to me,
pick.
Mina. Yes, the fun pick. Everyone's like nerdy favorite team. I did not know this until I researched for this podcast. Do you know who led the NFC West in DVOA last year? Do you know who had the best point differential in the NFC West?
I
It is the
didn't know about the
same
point differential, but I knew for the Cardinals DVOA is really high.
point differential. Seahawks, by the way, last in DVOA in the NFC West
Mm.
last season. Um, there is this kind of perception that I think we have seen whatever from Kyler Murray. Like, we know what he is. He's just okay. He's a little better than league average. They have been a top 10 offense by EPA per play since he came back in 2023. And yes, he has some playmakers. He has James Conner. He has Trey McBride. It's half a year in 2023 they did not have a Marvin Harrison Jr. level wide receiver. And even last year, Marvin Harrison Jr. was not the
Yeah.
difference maker I think a lot of people hoped. And so, we talk about some of the great coaches in football. Kevin O'Connell, for example, his Vikings are below the Cardinals in EPA per play. Kevin O'Connell is a great coach, but Drew Petzing and I think Kyler Murray deserve a lot of credit. This offense does not have a ton of, super exciting, transcendent players. Is really playing really well. They're holding up their end of the bargain. If the defense had been any good, this would have been a playoff team last year. And I don't see any reason to think that the offense is going to get significantly worse this season.
Yeah, the Cardinals are such a funny one because I think you're right.
Mhm.
The overall season numbers are surprising when you bring them up to
Yeah.
most people. Like, did you know this offense was 11th in DVO? The defense actually finished 14th, which is,
Hmm.
like, I think better than most people
Yeah.
would expect. Um, I think, okay, so first of all, we should probably talk about, like, why the offense felt worse than it was. And that to me was just the ups and downs. It was such a,
Hmm.
and it was, they were, I've talked about this before, but they were second in variance on offense,
Hmm.
which is another FTA metric. So it was on net over the course of the season, very good, but
Hmm.
it was chaotic. And with Kyler, there were
Yes.
ups and downs. I think the strongest case for them is actually the other side of the ball, which is to
Yeah.
say,
For sure.
yeah, like, if the offense is similar, I think you could look at this offense and say, I could see them being 11th again, which would be a win
Yeah.
because whatever. But the defense is where they've invested so much in terms of
Mhm.
talent-wise, right? Adding Josh Sweat, Calais Campbell, Dalvin
Mhm.
Tomlinson, drafting Walter Nolan, who's hurt right now, and Will
Mhm.
Johnson. If they can just be more normal. Why can't you be normal? While also mixing in some of the creativity that Nick Rallis has bought, I think you can absolutely make a case for the defense kind of meeting the offense. Let's say they both are around 11th, and in an
Mhm.
NFC West that I feel as clustered as any division in football. Do you agree with me there? I think the NFC West is as wide open as any division
Mhm.
right now. Like
For sure.
any of the four teams could they could finish. I had Jordan Rodriguez on to preview this division, and I was like,
Mhm.
I don't. At the end, I really didn't want to rank the teams because I truly felt like I had no idea how to do
Yes.
it.
Yes, it is totally going to come down to who's healthy. Not that there's any major injuries that the Rams and I guess the Cardinals are dealing with Walter Nolan, but the Rams are dealing with. The Niners are like half their rosters injured. It could just come down to that. I really think it is going to be so tight in this division. But like the Cardinals were the best team in the division by advanced metrics last year, and that was before all the
Yeah.
defensive additions they made. That was before getting healthier, and they had the fourth most injured defense on football last year by adjusted games lost, and that's with a defense that now, after chaos is, I think, a charitable way to describe it. Like they were just constantly trying to confuse opposing teams. That was their only move. It was just like I remember being a little kid and like not wanting to fight somebody, and like you just like make lots of noises and like make random moves because you just want to have to avoid the fight. They were 28th last year in pressure rate when they only rushed four. And that's going to change this year. They are going to be better rushing four. They're still going to have all those levers they can pull, but I think they're going to be better in coverage
Yeah.
this year. I think Will Johnson's going to be a very underrated draft pick for them, and I do think they're going to have the ability to just win up front. And if you can do that, that really unlocks a lot you can do on defense. And so, to me, again, I don't want to be the everything that went right last year is going to go better, and everything that went wrong is going to be improved. But there is a case to them being a top 10 team on
Yeah.
both sides of the football this year.
If I had a worry, I think the run game has been such a source of stability for this offense, and it's
Mm-hmm.
been a big part of. And having Kyler Murray back there healthy helps a lot in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying he's going to scramble more, which is I think would be massive.
Yep.
But James Conner is getting up in the years.
Mm-hmm.
They've got some depth behind him. You got Benson, DeMarcado, but
Yep.
like I would say, I'm like, oh, do we really think this run game can continue to be as it's so unique. They love putting 2,
Mm-hmm.
3 tight ends on the
They're
field.
Freeman, baby.
Yeah, right. But I do worry a little bit about James Conner potentially hitting a
Mm-hmm.
wall at his age. But like I said, NFC West. Actually, so a little peek behind the curtain. Bill, you initially
Mm-hmm.
picked the Niners,
I
who
did.
are a bit of an analytics darling this offseason because they were
Mm-hmm.
so injured last year and because they have such
Mm-hmm.
an easy schedule, which Mike and I are going to talk about. But they're the favorites right now. Which did that surprise you before we move on that they were the betting favorites over the Rams?
Yeah, really upsetting because I done all the work to prepare for the Niners, then had to prep the Cardinals this morning. But it was actually really useful for the purposes of this podcast. Like when I was doing it, I was talking myself into it. I was like, "Yeah, the Cardinals, I buy it. Like,
Yeah.
totally see it, totally see it."
I worked on this for a year and Vegas just tweeted it out. Vegas is smart, man. They know stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
they like the Rams, I think, are the conventional thought
Mm-hmm.
to be the favorite for. All right. We're gonna do the AFC East next because I think I have a surprising pick. So the Bills are the favorite, obviously. Should
Yes.
be. Yeah. I'm gonna go Dolphins here.
Ooh.
Yeah. You probably thought I was gonna say the
Ooh.
Patriots. The Patriots
That
are
would have been fun.
everybody's
I,
favorite making the leap team. Okay, let me make
you
a
could have
statement.
given me Jets. You could have given me Jets, and I would have been like, I don't necessarily see it, but that's fun. The
Okay.
Dolphins, though.
So here's my case. They all
Mhm.
have easy schedules because they AFC East. So you can look at they're all at the bottom of they all have
Sure.
they
Okay.
all face amongst the easiest. The Patriots have a slightly
Yep.
easier schedule, but they're all bottom,
Mm-hmm.
Last year, when Tua Tagovailoa came back, so the
Mm-hmm.
second half of the season, the Miami Dolphins were 4th league wide in dropback success rate, 8th in passing EPA per play.
Mm-hmm.
So just a reminder, when Tua Tagovailoa is in the lineup, this
Mm-hmm.
is not just a competent offense, it is
Mhm.
statistically one of the better offenses in the NFL. Let me keep going here. They were weighed down by a very, shall we say, lackluster run game. I
Mhm.
believe in Mike McDaniel's ability to fix that. I
Mhm.
know that there was a linear reasons why they were bad last year, but I think they obviously invested in the interior of the offensive line. This was a big priority for the team. I think the tackle position, they're going younger. We'll see how that works out. But I can't imagine it's going to be as bad as it was last year. Even if it doesn't go back to the soaring heights of prime Devon
Mhm.
Achane a couple years ago, I do think it's going to be better. I have faith in
Devon
Nick
A.
Foles.
Chance in his third year, and
I
we're
know.
like, he's done.
Okay.
We lost him.
Defensively, uh, not a good not this was not a good defense last year. It wasn't
Hmm.
terrible, right? They were 19th
Hmm. It's
overall.
true.
Um, but last year, so they were 19th overall. This was 19th in DVOA. So again, just below average.
Sure.
They did that with only 4 games from Jalen Phillips, who I like a lot.
Yeah, he's
0
great when he's
games
healthy.
from Bradley Chubb. Chop Robinson was excellent, 11th in pass rush win, 13th in
Hmm.
pressure rate. Zach Sealer is still really good. They have all those guys now. Now, I don't love the secondary. However, they did just sign Russell Douglas, so they brought in some competent veteran into the building, and I actually think Mika Fitzpatrick makes a lot of sense on the back end.
Yeah,
So I'm not saying to you this is going to be a great defense. Pass defense
sure.
still has issues, but I actually believe this is one of the better pass rush groups in the entire NFL.
I agree.
And if the offense is what it was when Tua came back, they might not be in as many, teams won't be able to run the ball in them as to the extent they did last year.
Yeah, they didn't have any explosives last year, which is like the weirdest thing with the
No.
Dolphins. You'd be like, okay, Devon A. Chance either going to be hurt or he's going to be averaging like 6 yards a carry. And he didn't really do either of those things. And that I find incredibly unlikely to recur again. So I think we'll see more big plays out of the offense. I think Tyreek had that really long touchdown in week 1 and then did not have a single long touchdown again the entire season, which is, again, unlikely. I would not expect that to happen again. I'm with you on a lot of this. I agree about the pass rush. I agree about the run game being better. I am not sure I'm with you on the offensive line. And
Yeah.
the only part that I struggle with on the defense is if you could promise me 17 games of Jalen Phillips and 17 games of Bradley Chubb and 17 games of Chop Robinson, the guy we saw last year who was a top 5 pass rusher, not among rookies, top 5 pass rusher, period, when he was in the lineup over the second half of the season, that would be terrifying. I just
Yeah.
don't know that I'm going to get 17 games out of those guys.
My premise is not that you'll get 17, it's that you'll get more than 0 and 4, right? From
Yes,
these
fair.
guys. So, and we'll see what Kenneth Grant brings on the interior as well.
Mhm.
I do not love the loss of Calais Campbell, who's like remains
He was really
incredibly
good.
I know.
By the way, Arizona Cardinals
Another
player
Arizona Cardinals. Yeah,
this
I
year.
know. But I just think I think the way, so to
Mhm.
go back to the premise, this is just about winning the division. It's not about going beyond that.
Fair.
Look, for any team to beat the Bills, I'm not
Well-
going to wood. Josh Allen's hurt in this scenario. Like, there's no
Yeah,
world,
that's
I
what I was
think, in
gonna
which
ask.
any AFC team surpasses the Bills if Josh Allen is healthy. My case here is if Josh
Mhm.
Allen gets hurt or misses a number of games, could any of these teams win enough games to surpass
Mhm.
him? I'd like New England. I think they're going to take a leap. I think people
Mhm.
might be a little bit ahead of themselves with where they are. I understand that their schedule's very easy. All their
Mhm.
schedules are easy. I just think we kind of might be forgetting how good this offense is when Tua is healthy. That's
Mhm.
all. It's flawed.
I
I'm not saying they're going to win in January. I'm just saying they're going to win a lot of regular season games.
I will actually say that I do think there's a possibility the Bills don't win the division, even if Josh Allen is healthy, because we almost saw that happen 2 years ago, right? I mean, they were
Yeah.
what, 6-6, 7-6 in midseason when they went on that late year winning streak after they promoted Joe Brady to OC. Like, that was a year where the Dolphins were comfortably ahead, and the Bills almost missed the division title even with a healthy and productive Josh Allen. So the Bills' defense is very turnover centric. That's even by their standards, it was very turnover centric last year. That's necessarily tough to keep up. I do think this division's not a lock for the Bills. I think the Bills obviously should be favored, but I I'll tell you what. I think people are just kind of tired of this version of the Dolphins,
I
and
know.
so they're
That's another,
discounting
yes.
how good they are.
That's why, like, I feel like there's so much fatigue around Miami because we've
Yes.
seen how the movie plays out at the end of the
Yes.
year. So, which I get it, right? And so I think that, yeah, that is absolutely there's a cloud on them that just isn't going to go away until they
Mhm.
beat the allegations when it's cold. But
There's
hey,
a real there's a real like poor man's Ravens thing happening here.
yeah, yeah. I think that happens in the NFL where we get
Mhm.
tired of teams and we say, I don't want to play with you anymore when they stop
Yes.
being like surprising and fun. I think that is what's happening with Miami. I think my feeling is just though when you look under the hood, you realize there are still the elements here of a team that can win a lot of games. So
There's a real like 23 Dolphins aw thank you, 25 Dolphins call HR element
yeah,
to this team that is probably unwarranted.
totally, completely, yeah. All right, NFC East. So the favorite, of course,
Ooh.
is yeah. You got. I know what's coming here. So
Ooh.
Philadelphia is the favorite, and I think we both agree that is deserved and obvious. If they were
But
to,
Mina, you know how the NFC East goes.
nobody wins. You're back to backs.
Nobody
It's
wins
been a
back to
while.
back. Can I interest you in a discussion about the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, I never talk about the Dallas Cowboys, so yeah, let's do it. No, no, I love this pick. Let's do it. Make the case. I
Okay.
love it because it's fun.
Okay. So this is again under the premise that we are getting Micah Parsons on the
Yeah.
field, if not week one, hopefully for the vast majority of the games. Because over the last 4 years, the Cowboys by EPA per play, the best defensive football with Micah Parsons on the field, I believe 31st or 32nd, depending on your flavor of EPA, without him on the field. So that is a
You're
starter.
you
They didn't have
you're
Micah
a better
Parsons
man
for
than I,
17
by the
games
way,
last year.
because I ran the multi-filter and I did passer rating for some
Mhm.
reason, but EPA play is much I don't know why I did that. Um, anyways, yes, EPA per
By
play is much
QBR, like whatever set you have, it's going to have
yeah.
Cowboys really good with Micah, really bad without Micah, and that is going to be a major difference. He missed part of the year last year. If you ask Jerry Jones, he missed 6 games. I think he actually missed 4 games when it actually played out in reality. And the Cowboys didn't have Dak Prescott for half the year last year. So you're just starting there. Your two most important players, history tells us they will be around more often in 2025. That goes a very long way. Their run defense, horrific. I don't think it's going to be good this year, but I just think of all the things that could be bad with your football team, run defense, even if it's just pretty bad, is not going to be the thing that derails you in the regular season. I have a stat for you, and I think this is a Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny exclusive that I have not put out there yet
Oh,
about the Dallas Cowboys, and it is a doozy of a
okay.
stat, Mina.
Hit me.
Red zone differential. The Cowboys last year had the second worst red zone defense in terms of keeping teams from scoring touchdowns, scoring points since 2000. The
Woo!
only team worse. The only team, the fourth worst defense since 2000.
So in 4 years.
Yes, the fourth worst red zone defense. Their
Wow.
offense was not historically bad, but it was like
Yeah.
one of the worst in football. So the defense between what they scored every time they made it to the red zone on offense and every time they made it to the red zone on defense, the second biggest since 2000, behind the 2009 Rams, who went 1-15 that season. Historically bad unit. Hard to find comparables, but even if we take the
Yeah.
30 worst differentials in the red zone
Wow.
from year to year and see what they did the next year, their red zone performance basically went back to average and they improved by more than 3 wins per 17 games. This metric, not what we talk about very often, but just historically bad in the red zone, with some of which is performance. Like they had a terrible run defense. Their
Yeah.
rushing offense was pretty bad. So you could see a kind of a on the field case for it. But even by those standards, horrific luck in the red zone last year.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Red zone's always interesting too because you and I have talked about this before, trying to figure out whether it's predictive or not on both sides of the
Yeah.
ball can be a little bit difficult, but historically bad is not likely to happen again. And then, 'cause especially because I think offensively, it's very hard for me to imagine a world in which this offense doesn't at least jump
Mhm.
7, 10.
But when you
7
get
is
when you
low.
get sideline Scotty in charge, I feel like that's a major step in the right direction.
I just
I,
think
I the offense is going to be
offensively,
good.
yes, they're gonna be good. Unless, again, you lose Dak again or you lose CD or whatever, but
I really like the
I
George Pickens edition, by the way. I feel like that's something that is actually going to work for 1 year for the Cowboys.
yeah, having to defend 2 number 1 receivers is very difficult.
Mhm.
Ask teams who play Cincinnati, ask teams who play
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. It's you have to make very difficult very it's funny though, like, going through doing all these division previews,
Mhm.
so many teams in the NFL don't even have one good cornerback. Like, I would
Yes.
argue that we have I don't say we have a cornerback crisis, but, like, cornerback depth to me is one of the biggest issues in the NFL this year, like, just
Mhm.
looking across the league. So, you're playing Dallas? You having to deal with both I mean, look, I do not think they're gonna beat the Philadelphia Eagles, but the Philadelphia Eagles got a cornerback 2 problem right now, like a lot of teams. Buffalo Bills have a cornerback 2 problem. Like,
Mhm.
this is the thing. So, the fact that they have those 2 players who have just shredded single high coverage
Mhm.
over the last few years, they're gonna win a lot of games because of their offense alone. However, what are you gonna say to the Commanders fans who are now gonna be screaming we just paid Terry McLaurin. Our
Mhm.
quarterback was that
Sort
one
of.
best. That's right. The offense, we had a Tunsil and Debo and Jaden Daniels doesn't seem like a regression candidate. What is your response to them?
Okay, so number one, the idea that like Laramie Tunsil is going to be like the thing that locks down and fixes your offensive line. Did we not just see the Texans' offensive line last year with Laramie Tunsil on it? And the Texans were like, oh no, we have to start all the way over on offense. Our line was so bad, which it was. And Laramie Tunsil was not the biggest problem, but did lead the NFL in penalties. They were the best fourth down offense in the history of the NFL last season, 20 for 23 on fourth down, more points
Yeah.
scored on drives with a fourth down conversion than any other team in NFL history. One of the oldest teams in football, one of the healthiest teams in football. And very little young talent besides Daniels and Sainer still, who were really good last year. Their picks, but the Ron Rivera era did not yield a lot of great draft picks. I think they are going to be. If last year they were the 2023 Texans, I think they're going to be the 2024 Texans, a team that, because they are not necessarily
Mm.
stocked with young talent. A lot of the players they relied upon the year before are not necessarily likely to improve. They're more likely to decline. Some of the offseason additions, I don't think they're going to fit all that well. And I think they're still going to be good. I think they're still going to be a playoff team. But I think we're going to be looking at them sort of stagnating a bit and saying, okay, maybe they're not on that incredibly upward trajectory that it seemed like the year before.
3 playoff teams from the NFC East.
Did I say the Eagles were going to make the post? They're okay. They're going to make the postseason. Not going to make that mistake again.
Um, yeah, I mean, the contrast between the Commanders being historically great on fourth
Mhm.
down and then the Cowboys being historically bad in a red zone.
Yeah.
It's an interesting argument. I have a lot of questions about this Commanders defense, so I think I'm pretty skeptical of that. I think
Yeah.
that the offense is going to be. I'm still really high on Jay Daniels. I don't think the offense is going to regress, but yeah, it's a good case, because it's one thing in the NFL that we know, Bill. It's that historical achievements are unlikely to repeat. And by
Yeah.
the way,
Just.
that's something you could poke in the hole of the Eagles, right? Because their running
Mm,
back would have to defy historical convention to be as good as he was last year. The nerds we love citing that the rule of how many touches did he have?
oh, I don't remember at this
300
point. A
and a
lot.
zillion. Yeah, just doesn't happen a lot.
But it,
Yeah,
it doesn't hurt you much when you're running free for like 60-yard touchdowns and not being tackled. Like I
that's
feel
how I
like
feel too.
you're
Yeah,
not getting hit as much if you're just
I
running into
know.
open
Oh,
space.
and also running behind like the Great Wall of it's a little bit different from a lot of the examples that get brought up with Saquon. I mean, I
Yes.
think
We'll
we
see.
both agree the Eagles should win. All right, let's take a quick break, come back, and let's do the AFC South first. All right, we're back. So in my AFC South pod, I actually did not
Hmm.
have this team as second, but I'm going to make a case for them to win the division.
Okay.
I had the Texans first, right? Obviously,
Sure.
I'm going to make a case for them to win the division because of variance.
Okay.
Which is to say, I think that there's a broader range of outcomes for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I actually had the Colts
Hmm.
above them because I felt like the Colts have a better roster and their floor is higher because of the defense, which I like some of the things that they've done.
Hmm.
I still very skeptical about the Jags defense, which I'll get to in a second.
Sure.
But I think that the floor for the Jags offense ceiling, sorry, is higher. So I'm going with
Hmm.
the Jags here as my surprise winner in the AFC South. They have an incredibly easy schedule. 20.
Sure.
They all do, right? Again,
Yeah.
but 28th. They were very bad in one-score games last year.
They were bad in
They
all games. We don't have
they were
to be
bad in all
specific
games.
about that one.
So to be honest, the offense, I think it's actually not too dissimilar from Dallas in some ways, which is to
Mhm.
say, what if Travis Hunter is that dude, right? Like, what if he
Right.
is? So he was drafted to be the best wide receiver in the class. I just think offensively, if you have two true stud
Yes.
receivers, it just creates such a problem. You have Liam Cohen, who I think is going to give them a massive upgrader in terms of play calling. I
Mhm.
think you have a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence who's been streaky and up and down, but more likely than not, we're going to see improvement from him.
Yeah.
Defensively, the other thing about the offense, and this is tied to the defense, last year they were dead last in the NFL in starting field position because they were saddled
Yes.
with the worst defense in
Mhm.
football. I do
Mhm.
not think this defense is going to be a top 10 unit. I do not think that they're going to be a top 15 unit. There are just too many questions. But I also don't think they're going to be as bad as they were last year. I think one of my biggest L's was thinking Ryan Nielsen was a good defensive coordinator. He
It
was good in Atlanta.
happens.
He was good in
He was good in
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
I just think when I went through some of their tendencies, I mean, they played so much man coverage. They were third
Mhm.
in man coverage last year, and they were awful at it. I just think that we're going to
Yeah.
see some improvement on that side of the ball, and the offense won't be put in as many horrible positions because of it.
Yeah. So one thing you left out on the offense that I think is important is they just gonna have Trevor Lawrence more often. Like they had half a year of Mac Jones last season. And not just like not Mac Jones, but like Mac Jones playing for a team that had clearly quit, that had no interest in actually competing for most of the season. That's not a good combination. Like even just a slightly motivated Trevor Lawrence to me is a major step forward for that offense. And I do think you're right about Travis Hunter. I'm optimistic, and I think that's it is going to be really hard to cover both those guys consistently, and I'm intrigued to see that. The defense, one of the reasons that they gave the offense the worst average starting field position of any offense in football is because they didn't force any short fields and didn't force any turnovers.
Yeah.
This team had one multi-turnover game last year. By the way, it came against Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings. Very weird time to get your one multi-turnover game. They still lost because they didn't score a single touchdown on offense in that game. But the Jacksonville Jaguars, one multi-turnover game last year, the fewest, or tied for the fewest for any team in NFL history. If there is a lesson you can take away from the Mina Show featuring Lenny in this episode, when you are historically bad at something, that is usually something that's not going to happen again. The Jaguars could not force any turnovers, and so, they made major changes to the secondary. They're going to get more Tyson Campbell, hopefully, this year, who is their best cornerback. They are significantly better with him on the field. They went out and signed Jordan Lewis. They signed Eric Murray. And they drafted Travis Hunter, who we know probably has the best hands of any cornerback entering the NFL in many years because he's actually secretly also a wide receiver. So that to me is like the fundamental, on paper, that defense does not look great, and I agree with you. I don't think it looks great on paper. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the moves the Jaguars made, but if you add a turnover a game to the mix, and that's not crazy to think about the sort of shift they could make based on how few takeaways they had last year. If you could add 10, 12 turnovers to that mix, that changes the way we look at that defense. Suddenly, they look much better because they're creating more big plays and putting their offense in a position to turn some of those short fields into touchdowns.
I think playing a little less man coverage could help in that regard as well, in terms of allowing the secondary to have eyes in the football. It's so weird because like they were so bad statistically, but I still think Josh Hines Allen and Trevon Walker are good.
They're good.
They're good players. So I'm like, how could you? I don't understand how you have these two players. I know that they don't have depth behind them, but they're just the vibe. And then let me just go off of, because we've been doing a lot of like historical regression. The vibes of this team were so toxic last year with Doug Peterson. I'm giving them a bump purely based on the entire team not quitting, like not like hating the season.
This is the Jag cycle. Hire a coach you're excited about. Like within 3 years, vibes are so bad that hiring another coach will solve our problems. The cycle of life continues. I agree with you. I mean, that Lions game where it looked like every player they had wanted to be somewhere else, and then they didn't fire Doug Peterson after the game. Like everyone was like, I think there were even reports heading into the game of like, if the Jaguars don't play well, Doug Peterson's going to get fired. They
Yeah.
played the worst game anybody played all year, and it did not matter. It was a sinking ship for most of the season. I do think I'm still a little nervous about Liam Cohen. I'm still not sure he's as good as we're making him out to be in terms of offensive coaching, but I think there's going to be more motion in this offense. I think it's going to be a little more modern than what Doug Peterson was running last season. And I just think you're going to see the fact that those receivers are going to be able to take a lot of pressure off this offense. I do think there's not going to be the same level of sort of weight being put on Trevor Lawrence, on the running backs. I think if those two wide receivers work out, I think we both believe that's going to happen. It's going to make everyone's life so much easier.
NFC South.
NFC South. This one, not fun, Mina. Not fun.
Why?
Not. I can't pick the Bucs because they are the favorites.
The Bucs are the
and they
favorite.
should be.
Yeah.
You know I'm not picking the Saints. There's no way. So it's basically Falcons or Panthers by default. And I started to make the Panthers conversation, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. So I just went Falcons by process of elimination. And I don't think they are going to be fixed on defense, but I have a historical outlier stat for you. Shocking, I know.
Can I guess what it is?
Please.
Is it pressure related? Is it sack related? Is it the fact that they can't get either of those things and haven't been able to for years?
Do you want to know what their QBR was last year when they blitzed?
Oh God.
97.1 opposing
That's insane.
QBR.
That's crazy.
The worst QBR allowed by any team when they blitzed since at least 2007, which is the history of QBR. We don't have any QBR data going back any further.
You know what's so crazy about that? Their blitzing linebacker is their best pass rusher.
Yes.
So that's crazy.
Oh. Well, Mina, can I interest you in 2 first-round picks at edge rusher? Because that apparently drove Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot so crazy that they said, screw it, we don't need future draft picks. We just need guys who can rush the quarterback. And so after a decade, outside of that one Vic Beasley season that was really good, maybe this will solve their pass rush problems. They have not been good rushing the quarterback for a very long time. But I think that's where you start with the Falcons, right? Like, we'll get to Michael Penix, but they think, if we get a pass rush with our front four, that can fix our defense. We can fix him. Is that going to work? I'm a little skeptical, but I do think it's plausible to think that they're not going to be the worst blitzing defense of all time because, number one, they're going to be more effective because they have better players, and number two, they're just not going to have to blitz as often because they have better pieces up front.
Terry Fontenot drafts like me when I'm watching my kid and the draft is happening on my phone, and I go in with a plan like, oh, I'm gonna go like no RBs and then no QB whatever, and then I just realize it's like the second round and I'm panicking about like a run on wide receivers and I just overdraft like 3 of them in a row or something. Like I just can't believe this man has been. Look, you could make a case for the Falcons, Panthers, the Bucs, but I think that the Falcons do have the strongest argument outside of Tampa.
But there's the variance case, right? I mean, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars offense having a high variance, being a higher variance offense than, say, Daniel Jones and the Colts offense. And that's the Michael Penix argument, right? Like,
yes, boom or bust.
Bryce Young, right.
Explosive. I mean, I'll tell you one thing about Michael Penix. He's gonna sling that thing. And look,
he will.
It's hard to know based on the last 3 games because of the quality of defenses he played exactly what it means. But I do think that if you look at the infrastructure around him and you look at his skill set, you can make a case for this offense being explosive. Yeah. A little worried about the Caleb McGarry injury and the lack of tackle depth there, especially because Penix is not like
left-handed.
He's not left-handed, and he also is not a runner, right? So he's not like gonna mitigate it in that way. But I do think if you're a Falcons fan, you saw enough from him to be excited. And given the number of resources that they threw at the pass rusher, you could definitely make a case for it not being so bad and not being historically bad when it comes to sending pressure.
Yeah, I mean, led the league in air yards those final 3 weeks of the year, so he was comfortable chucking it deep. We saw at Washington, which, by the way, if he doesn't work out, I don't understand how the Washington offense was good because Jalen Polk had one of the worst seasons ever. Romadudze kind of struggled. Jalen McMillan wasn't all that great as a rookie. Ryan Grubb got fired. I don't know who was good on that offense to make it really good.
The
But
offensive
apparently
line was really good.
someone,
Let me answer.
that must be it.
Well, I still believe in Odunze and McMillan,
I do
but
too.
the offense. I mean, this is who was I talking to? Like, I think Ryan Grubb's biggest lesson coming to the NFL was like, ooh, it's really hard to call an offense when you don't have a dominant offensive line and like a talent advantage there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that goes to Penix, right? He got to play behind a great offensive line.
Yeah.
He has a great
Yeah.
arm.
And the Falcons have a good line. The only problem is their right tackle and their backup right tackle are now out for like the first 2 months of the year, and that is the blind side.
They also
for two
didn't
teams.
they didn't draft any linemen because they only drafted defense, which
Yes.
again goes back to my analogy there. No, I think you can absolutely make a case for it. They all have easy schedules in the NFC South, also.
Yeah,
of course.
that's the other part of it.
They get to play each other. Okay, finally we got the AFC North and the NFC North. My
Okay.
AFC North is gonna be surprising. I want to make a case for the Pittsburgh Steelers here.
Ooh. I have been wrong about the Pittsburgh Steelers pretty much every single season, so I am not a reliable source here. I'm willing to go on this bandwagon with you if I have to.
The case is really just it starts with the very obvious case, right? Which is that they've been on the verge of winning the division or knocking on the door and then made it to the playoffs with very bad quarterback play. Perhaps, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be a massive upgrade. I've been pretty clear on that all offseason, but he just has to be competent for this team to be, in the mix. But the thing that I'm going to argue actually is more just about the defense being very good. I had them as a top 10 defense. Which is, this was a defense that was last year 8th in DVOA, 10th in EPA per play, 2nd in third down conversion rate forced. And when I look at them on paper, I think they're as talented as they were last season. So it's hard for me. I know Cam Wayward's getting older, and Derek Harmon's hurt, but they did draft a younger defensive lineman in Derek Harmon, who I think could mitigate that to some degree. I liked the Jalen Ramsey addition. I think he fits what they do defensively better than Minka did. I'm not saying either player is better, but I think from a football standpoint, you can make the case for it. I think he helps them with the Ravens in particular, who are the thorn in their side. So the argument for the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously this is like, Lamar's hurt or something. I don't think that I just think the Ravens are too good.
Yeah.
Is that they are significantly more balanced than the Cincinnati Bengals, who have obviously the biggest discrepancy between offense and defense in the NFL. And because of that balance, they could win a lot of close games and like muck things up.
The Steelers winning a lot of close games with like weird, seemingly unsustainable stuff. Mina, come on. Nobody will buy it.
Kicker.
They got great special teams. Like they have like 8. There's like 6 games a year where they force a fumble or do something weird that gets them an extra possession on special teams. No, I mean it's totally reasonable, and I agree with you wholeheartedly about the Jalen Ramsey thing. I do think they're going to use him more in the slot, more as like kind of a hybrid cornerback safety. I think he's going to be like I think we saw last year Jalen Ramsey probably at the point in his career where you don't want him as like a very heavy man corner. It's just not what he's going to do at this point of his career. But I do think you're going to see him play at the line of scrimmage more. The Dolphins dramatically increased his blitz rate last year, and he was really good at that. So I think you're going to see him in the backfield or near the line of scrimmage more often. That's going to be a plus. He's a very smart player. I like a lot of their young pieces. The one guy you didn't mention was Joey Porter Jr., who was awesome as a rookie. Maybe not quite as good last year, but I do think they have, with Keanu Benton when he comes back, with Joey Porter, like they have a young, legitimate core around some of the names we know, around Cam Hayward, who, by the way, was awesome last year, even at 75 years old, with TJ Watt, who was still really good. It's not crazy.
Highsmith, Herbig, there's depth behind Watt, even if he gets a little banged up. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's not at all crazy to think they could be a top 5 defense. And the case on offense to me is the offensive line, where they had a terrible line for years. They invested a lot in the line over the last few years. Did lose Dan Moore, but if I'm being honest, I don't think Dan Moore is a great NFL left tackle. I think it hurts you more in terms of having a guy you can fall back on, which the Steelers did over and over again. But you're getting Fautanu back after he missed most of his rookie season. I think Zach Frazier is really good. I think Zach Frazier is one of the.
The
It's unfortunate
interior
that he's
is
stuck behind Creed
awesome.
Humphrey. It's a really promising offensive line, and we know with Arthur Smith, like if the offensive line is good, they can get the run game going. That to me is the way the offense
Yeah,
improves. I don't think it's
100%.
because of Aaron Rodgers. I don't think it's because the quarterback play is going to be significantly better than it was last year or the year before, or the year before. But those offenses have been inconsistent because they haven't been able to run the football. And so I think having an offense that could plausibly on paper run the football is the way you unlock a more consistent and more effective version of that Steelers offense.
Yeah, you could argue that Broderick Jones is like one of the most important players in the NFL this year, who's going to be left tackle for them, and because if he is competent this year at left
Yes.
tackle, I think that this entire premise works. Run the
Yeah.
ball. Rodgers point guards the thing, but if he's not, it could be ugly. So, I mean, but let me before we get to the NFC North, let me just ask
Mhm.
you: do you think what's your panic level about the Bengals defense after this preseason?
Well, they
Oh,
got
by
Trey
the way,
Henderson back.
yeah. So Trey Hendrickson, they gave him like $14 million more. I think
Yep.
it's like just a 1 year deal, so there's no extension. That in itself was kind of interesting, by the way, because it suggests that they're done with him after this year and that they never wanted to sign him to a long-term extension. How do you feel about
Yeah.
that generally?
Well, Trey Anderson came out a couple weeks earlier, I believe, and said, we've agreed on the length of the contract, and we've agreed on the size of the contract, but we haven't agreed on guarantees, which implies that they had a structure for a long-term deal and then never agreed to it. And Trey Anderson was like, whatever, screw this. I'm going to just come back and play and then leave. So at the time we record this, we don't know if he got any sort of like no tag clause or anything at the end of this
That is
contract, but
something I'm curious about. Yeah.
it is very mysterious how we hear about these contracts, Mina, and then we don't actually get the important pieces of information about them until much later. Very suspicious how that happens. I, like you're just hoping for Al Golden to figure it out. You're just hoping that like we actually have 5 or 6 really promising young pieces, and we just Lou Anarumo is just let's not get the most out of them. Sort of like the Jim Schwartz situation in Cleveland, where like those guys were talented, but when Jim Schwartz got there, they like all their young players leveled up overnight. Like JOK leveled up on the corners, or Denzel Ward leveled up. Denzel Ward even played much better with Jim Schwartz. It feels like that's the kind of shift that has to happen. But I mean, Joe Burrow had one of the 5 best seasons a quarterback has ever had, and still almost made the postseason. The defense was so bad. Again, historically, would tell us they're going to be better this year. I just don't know how that actually plays out in reality.
Yeah. I just struggle with the depth chart on defense.
Mm-hmm.
When I just look at it, I'm like, I don't see it. I'm be very
Right.
curious. By the way, you and I are taping this right now, Tuesday morning, to see if they. I have to think they're going to be pretty active with some of the cuts going around. Although I haven't,
They
no
should be.
one's really jumped out to me as like an obvious, like, ooh, that's surprising that they cut him. The Bengals should make a
Mm-hmm.
move on that, but
Mm-hmm.
you got to do something there. Particularly the run defense just looks
Yeah.
so bad in the preseason. It was really concerning.
Yeah. The Bengals ones are not great, so you can imagine how the twos and the threes are. But they don't have to be a good defense. If they're just
Yeah,
the
just like
24th best defense in football,
right.
that's a playoff team
That's
comfortably.
fine.
Like
Yeah.
they waltz into the postseason with a bad defense, just not a truly corrupt and embarrassing defense.
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, if the Bengals have the third or fourth best offense and the 24th best defense, you got them on one side. And then on the other side, what if the Steelers have like the ninth best defense and the 14th best offense?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to know how that shakes. I mean, comes down to how they
There's that Tomlin guy. I feel like he might be a difference maker when it comes down to those narrow situations.
All right, let's end with a division that many say could be the best in the NFL.
Yeah.
That is the
Do you believe
NFC
that?
North. Um, yeah, I actually do
More
believe
than
that.
AFC West.
You heard a lot of my Chargers. Maybe
This
not. Maybe
hurts.
the AFC West, because I think the Raiders' offense is going to be really fun, and that's going to make them more competitive. I don't know, man. I'm pretty high on the NFC North, though. I guess
They're
I'll go
pretty
AFC
good.
West because I think that the Chargers will still be, in the mix, and the Raiders, I think, offense will be good enough to bring them up. But I don't know. It's close.
So in the NFC North, I'm not picking the Bears. I was tempted. I did start to put together a Bears list, but I'm not willing to do that. There's just the top of the division is just so good. I think it's going to be competitive. I wouldn't be shocked if the Bears won the division in the same way that, other last place teams winning the division would shock me. But I went with the Packers, and that's sort of partly because they were every bit as good as the top of the division last year. I think they were third in
Yeah.
DVOA. The Lions were second. The Vikings were seventh. They were somewhere in the bottom of the top 10. And the Lions and the Vikings went a combined 15-3, I believe, in one-score games last year, which is not going to happen again, even if Kevin O'Connell and Dan Campbell are two of the best coaches in football. The Packers have the youngest roster in football, so they have a lot of players you would expect to take a step forward this year. They, of course, invested a lot this offseason in terms of bringing in guys like Nate Hobbs and Aaron Banks. They have the ability to spend a lot because they don't spend a lot on their roster, so many guys on rookie deals. Love the Matthew Golden and Savion Williams additions at wide receiver, a much-needed burst of speed for that offense. And, I'm not going to do maybe the defense with 9 first-round picks will be really good this year, because they're always bad to pretty good. I think they're going to be pretty good again this year. But to me, I think the case is Jordan Love being the Jordan Love from post-Toyotathon all year. And I know that, again, because we've seen it twice, I think there's this thing in our heads where we just sort of figure out he's not going to do it until we get to November and December. But there's a reason why Jordan Love, to me, has been much better late in the year. Year one, he was basically playing his first NFL snaps. He was not used to playing didn't have a lot of experience, and then got better as the year went along. And then last year, he gets hurt in the Eagles game, suffers a knee injury, suffered a groin injury later in the first half of the year as well. Kind of rushed back, even though the Malik Willis offense was one of the most fun things to watch all season. But I just think there's reasons to think Jordan Love can be that guy all season. And if he is, that's a really scary proposition.
Totally agree about Jordan Love. I love hearing him say that he's going to scramble more this year because he's healthy too. I think that adds an important element to this offense. Really like what I've seen from Golden. I am a huge believer in the Packers generally, and I agree with you. I think I still have the Lions because I really like their defense, but Packers continuity on the coaching staff is big too, which they. It's funny, man. The NFC North has some good coaches. Good Lord. Yeah. All 4 teams right now have really good, not just head coach, coordinators. Anyways. So I agree with you. If I were to poke a hole, pardon me, defense had a lot of turnovers last year.
Yeah.
We feel good about their ability to do that again.
No, not especially.
They're such a funny defense too, Bill, because I think they have good players.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the best players? Xavier McKinney.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
This is a Packers team that does not have many stars. They have a lot of good players. They're really good throughout the roster, one of the deepest rosters in football. But the scenario where they are a Super Bowl contender, they have 3 players poke through and become superstars. Maybe Edgerrin Cooper is that guy.
Holy smokes. He would be the one who I would pick. 100%. Him, you kind of feel good about the spine of the defense, right?
Yes.
With McKinney, Cooper, you got Kenny Clark up front. It's just corner and edge is such
corner is a real problem for me.
What have I been saying? This is a league-wide cornerback issue.
The Packers are part of this problem. Mina, I'm a little skeptical, a little nervous. They got rid of Jair Alexander, which I understand at some point, if you're counting on him for 6 games and 1 weird scandal a year, probably not best to pay him $20 million, and it's probably time to move on. But they signed Hobbs, who was a slot corner at his best with the Raiders, and he's going to play outside probably a fair amount this year, which maybe it works. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. They were very happy with what they got out of Josh Jacobs when he left the Raiders last year. But that's the thing that concerns me, because is there someone out there they feel confident covering Amon-Ra St. Brown? Someone who they feel confident about covering Justin Jefferson? That's the part that I think.
Yeah.
If they can figure that part out, then I feel really good.
It's an issue in the division, but this goes back to your Cowboys case, which is again, you look at teams like Green Bay, Minnesota. And look, Minnesota, they do their front is great. So I'm not saying this is necessarily. I still think they would have hypothetically success against them. But again, like
Yeah.
there are so few defenses in the NFL that I feel good about against CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Packers corner room is an issue, but they have a very high floor to me because of the coaching staff, my belief in the quarterback, and they do have like good players on both sides of the ball. I think to your point though, it's just kind of can a couple of those players take a step forward and become superstars? That's going to be, I think, interesting to see.
Yeah, they're all like the Packers, Lions, and Vikings are all to me in the 9, 10, 11 win range. I just think of those three, the Packers are seen as the third worst of those teams in some ways. Maybe the Vikings are behind them because of the JJ stuff, but I just think the Packers are every bit as good as those teams, and the record didn't really sell them. They sold them a little short last year.
All right. That's it. Those are our surprise picks. We did the entire NFL.
How many do you think are actually going to win the division? Do you want to put a number on how many of them will actually pull it out?
Okay, that's a great question. So of all of them, who is most likely to do it?
Okay.
I would say the Packers is probably the one that comes to mind, just because I think that the Lions, there's some vulnerability there. How about you?
I would go Cardinals.
Yeah, because they're also clustered.
So chaotic, and they're so close.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Packers would make sense as well, but trying to think of your picks. I think the Jags have a legit shot too.
Jags, Broncos, Dolphins. I mean, the thing about the AFC is it's just so top heavy. Like the Bills, Ravens, and Chiefs are so stacked that it's hard to imagine any of those three teams.
So I'll say Jags by sort of the one division where I don't feel so great about the team at first.
You don't feel good about a rookie left tackle and Blake Fisher, I guess would be. I just saw the news that they moved on from both Cam Robinson and Trent Brown. This has been my I've been on so many text threads with like people in our lives, like Nate Tice and Ben Solak, who are like, no, the Chiefs offensive line is going to be so much better because Nick Caley is going to solve everything. And I feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm like, the players matter, guys. The players matter. Maybe they'll be better, but I mean, I like everything else about the Texans, so I still have them winning the division, to be clear, but I do not love that offensive line situation.
They were just like, let's add every single offensive lineman we can find, and we'll just figure it out in camp. And they paid Cam Robinson a pretty significant bonus, so that is a very expensive.
Let's pick a guy who the Seahawks moved on from. That's a sentence you never want to say about an offensive lineman over the last 5 years. Bill, I would never move on from you. So thank you so much for joining the show. Check out the Bill Barnwell show wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, it'd be good to have you on, and I will see you around, buddy.